There's very little correlation between how much money you have and the level of happiness past the basic subsistence level. The element that there's the highest correlation with is an element of community, who you're with. So it's this meaningful work. Are you on a mission? And meaningful relationships through a life arc that evolves. So that's my definition of success is more like evolving well and contributing to evolution.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for committing to your growth, to your self-development, taking out the valuable time of your lives to use it to become better, to grow, and to learn. You could be doing anything in the world right now, whether you're walking your dog, whether you're commuting, or whether you're at work and trying to learn more. Thank you for making this commitment to wisdom and to knowledge. And you know that my commitment to you on this podcast is to introduce you to the people, the ideas, the messages that can transform your work, life, and love. And today's guest is going to do just that. I'm so excited personally. This has been someone that I've been wanting to bring to you on the podcast for a long time, so I'm going to have to contain my excitement as well. But he's an American billionaire investor, hedge fund manager, and philanthropist, and the author of this incredible book called Principles. Now, I read this book when it first came out, and there were so many incredible insights of wisdom in there. And today I get to sit down with the one and only Ray Dalio. Ray, thank you so much for being here.
Whoa, like I don't deserve all that, but back at you. Thank you.
No, you're very kind. You're very kind. And I'm so grateful to have this opportunity with you because I truly believe that I'm so grateful. You said on the phone when we were speaking that there are these different stages of life. And I'm so grateful that you're at the stage of your life where you are sharing everything you've learned with all of us, because I think there's such a wealth of knowledge that we all have to gain from. So thank you from me and everyone else who's listening and watching for taking this next stage in your life.
Well, it's a treat and a responsibility, so I'm happy to do it. Thank you for helping me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So today I want to dive into life and work and many different areas that you speak about in your incredible book, Principles. And the first thing I want to dive into is these stages of life you speak about. Because when you said that to me on the phone the other day, they really resonated. Why don't you guide the audience through those different stages and phases and how you see them changing our life?
Well, I think to simplify, there are 3 stages in your life. The first stage in your life is when you're learning and you're dependent on others. Go to school, come out, graduate from school. It's very different from the second phase of your life where you're working, others are dependent on you, and you're trying to be successful. And that's what larger your audience is in that early stages.
Absolutely.
So I'm so excited to speak to them. And that whole arc is totally different. Like on the first arc, first part of the life, you pretty much follow a track. What schools, parents taking care of you, whatever it is, and then what decisions do you make? You hardly make any decisions. You make, okay, what college do you go to? If you go to college, then you go to the college, and what major do you have? And then you come out to this world, the second stage, in which really the whole thing is wide open to you, particularly if you don't stay on a track. And you realize that there's no instruction manual and you can go anywhere and you could do anything. And then it's a very different phase. It's a more difficult phase. And that second phase then has an arc to it. And then somewhere in the vicinity of your last phase, that's the phase where you're free to live and free to die. And your preferences change. You change. Your relationships with others change. So that's the life arc that I'm referring to. And so I'm in the transition from the end of my second phase to the beginning of my third phase. And at that phase, I just want to pass along what I've learned to help people who are early in their second phase.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right that is the majority of people that are listening and watching right now. And for me, you brought something up really interesting there. One of the biggest things is we become paralyzed by choice and decisions. Because so much of that early phase is where things were decided for us, where choices were made for us. And I often feel we bring that mindset to the second phase where we're still looking for someone else to help tell us what to do and what decision to make and what's the right thing to do. How have you seen through your experiences, how have you dealt with choice and decision as that phase of life changes?
Well, I think, first of all, one has to know their nature. You might have to discover it. But your nature means, do you have a sense of adventure? Do you seek security? Are you an extrovert, an introvert? Those types of things. So personal discovery is important. I think that who you're with and where you are is more important than what you do. Because in the early phase of that second phase, it's total discovery. So it's experimentation. You went to India for 3 years, right?
Yes.
And that, but if you have that sense of adventure, to let go, you can discover. That's your opportunity. But discover yourself as well as to discover what the choices are like. And then as you move later into that, you'll feel the pulls. And to feel never trapped. We were talking just before we began that so many people say, I can't be that way because my job won't allow it, which is a silly concept because you have the freedom of those choices, even when you have constraining situations. So I think that's the life arc. Enjoy this wide open choice. You can be anywhere in the world. You can do almost anything. Let go, experiment, and then move on.
Absolutely. And did you feel that same freedom when you started as well? Or do you feel it's changed now? Do you think there's more access?
In my case, when I was 12, I got hooked on trading markets. So I loved that game. So I discovered it early. And then I wanted to, but I had this sense of adventure. I discovered when I went to work at a company that working at a company was not my thing. I got fired. I punched my boss. And I really then learned the freedom. I didn't have any idea that I was setting up a company. I just sort of said, I can do these things. Probably like you. You discovered, okay, I could do those things. And then one thing leads to another. And then, you build. And I always like the variety. So my nature is macro. So I like going all over the world, all different cultures, understanding how the world works. And so I found something that clicked through that experimentation.
Yeah,
but then there's ups and downs, right? Lots of ups and downs. So we need to talk about failure. How great failure is.
Yeah, let's do that, because I think when I'm hearing you say that, it's so refreshing. Because when I hear you saying, I had to figure it out and I was experimenting and testing and I didn't even know what I was building, I love hearing that, because that's what my experience so far has been too, as opposed to like a very rigid, strategic, not that there isn't strategy, of course there is, but something very rigid and planned. There is a lot of experimentation in that growth where failure is natural.
Yeah. My son in 2014 gave me a book, Joseph Campbell, and it was called Hero of a Thousand Faces, and it refers to the hero's journey. And this is like at the end of my experience, and I found that that's very, very true. And so there's this cycle. So a certain type of personality wants a taste for adventure. You go out and have the adventure. And then there are the ups and downs, and then you crash. You will have a failure. If you're adventurous and you're pushing the limits, you will have a failure. And that failure can be a transformative experience. I have an expression that pain plus reflection equals progress. So they call it the abyss. And change, the learning of humility, to maintain your aggressiveness, your audacity, and to simultaneously learn humility. And that happened to me. I was, you described it. I graduated from school. 2 years, I worked on Wall Street for 2 years. I got fired from my job. And 2 years later, I'm running my little company. Something like 7, 8 years after that, I made terrible mistakes in the markets. I crashed and I lost everything. And I was so broke that I had to borrow $4,000 from my dad to help pay for my family expenses. And it was publicly because I was on Wall Street Week and I made all those mistakes. And that was one of the most painful. Pain can be great because it changed my whole perspective to decision making. As I'm saying, it gave me the humility I needed to operate with my audacity. In other words, to simultaneously be bold and aggressive, and also to know that I could be careful. I learned that if you're doing risky things, anybody who does risky things, tightrope walk across buildings or whatever, it's that they also know how to deal with the risks well. So how to be bold and then to learn from the failures. And it changed my whole approach to failure. I began to think of failures like puzzles, that if I could solve the puzzle, I'd get a gem. And the puzzle was, what would I do differently in the future? And the gem I would get would be a principle of how I would deal with the future differently. So understanding that if you press the limits, you're going to fail, and it's okay. And life is a long journey. Failure has a tone to it that it sounds like it's an end. No, it's part of that process of learning and then making that great advance. But the humility combined with the audacity was helpful, because then I would go to try to find the smartest people I could find who disagreed with me, that independent thinking. And I would also know how to deal with my risks better. So I kept my upside without losing my downside. So that's failure and pain. If you look at the second order effects, if you make the most of them, they're the most valuable.
Absolutely. And I love that balance that you've just spoke about, or that bringing of the two together of humility and audacity. I've never heard it like that before. And I really value that, because I can see why humility is so powerful, but not that humility stops you from having that boldness and that courage. And almost like, how have you maintained that? Because I'm guessing that being at rock bottom, like having to borrow $4,000, can be very painful. And then when you're experimenting again and going on your next adventure, you've got to be okay with the fact that that could happen again? Or was that humility holding that back, having that happen again?
I think the tightrope walker crossing the building is the example, right?
Yes.
You fall, and you fall hard. Now, some people won't get on the tightrope again.
Yeah.
Some people will get on the tightrope again.
Yes.
And then they think, how do I do that? So how do I be bold and aggressive? And I pull it off. And it's the same way, right? You start to think, well, maybe I do this or that differently, and I practice more. It's that combination of the caution and practice that allows you to take it to the limits that you never would have been able to take it to before, right? I learned that. Once I learned that, everything changed. Wow. Because I also would know how to take the hits. In other words, I don't mind getting banged, but I don't want to get knocked out of the game.
Yes.
So the willingness to get banged but not knocked out of the game is a big part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, like a good fighter, right? Like you just giving that analogy for me. It's like sometimes a boxer or a fighter needs to know which punches to take in order to be able to drop a bigger punch. That's part of the game. And that's what you were saying about solving a puzzle. I love that analogy, because I think if we see everything as puzzles, that there's a way of figuring it out, right? You know there's an answer to a puzzle.
Yes, I think the key is to think of reality as you're given. Reality is reality. And think of it as working like a machine. There are cause-effect relationships that make the realities around you. Okay, now, if you go above yourself and you look at that, how does that machine work? And then how do I interact with that machine to get what I want? And you do that with an equanimity. Meditation also helped me a lot.
Yes.
I learned to meditate many years ago. If you have equanimity and you look at it above and you look at it with curiosity and you say, oh, I must not be interacting well with my reality, and how do I change it and how does it work? It's a very powerful way of approaching life.
Absolutely. And that definition of equanimity too, equanimity means to deal with good and bad.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to know, how have you celebrated and embraced successes in your life too? We just spoke about failure. I'm intrigued to know how someone like yourself deals with success.
Well, I think my thinking about success has evolved over a period of time. I thought about success. I today think about success differently. It's like the way I thought about it originally when you have this failure. I thought that it's like there's a jungle out there. I want to have the greatest life possible, but in order to be successful, I have to cross this dangerous jungle. Now, I could stay on the one side of the jungle and have a boring, safe life, but unless I deal with the risks and return go together, and it's like going into this jungle. So what would I choose? Would I choose to go into the jungle and cross the jungle and have the greatest life possible, but I might get bad things might happen? And then I started to think when I went into that jungle, of course I had to cross the jungle, but I started to realize how to cross the jungle, most importantly, with people who could see things differently than I could on the mission with me. And so, and we would protect each other in that jungle. And that's what it was like. So life is a lot like that. Who are you in the jungle with? And they might see things differently from you. And then you protect each other and you go through. And the thing that I discovered was that as I had these successes and failures, and much more successes than failures, I began to realize that I didn't care as much about the success as I cared about the journey. Okay. In other words, I didn't want to get out of the jungle. I didn't want to get to the other side, because it might be like, I don't know, climbing mountains or doing whatever you realize. There's a new peak and there's a new level of success, and it won't keep you happy. Okay. You don't sit there. You want to go on.
Yes.
And it is the ups and downs of that journey and the striving into becoming better that becomes the new definition of success. And so I started to see my life in this life arc way, with my preferences changing, because your preferences naturally change as one has kids and as they start to think. I mean, everybody that you're dealing with is going through a life arc. If you think about who are the people you love, what is your relationship with your parents? What are your relationship? Do you have children? They will have a life arc. And as you go through that life arc and you see those things changing, then you start to realize that operating consistent with that life arc and on that journey to evolve well, is what success is. It's not the money. It's like money loses its marginal utility very quickly, right? If you studies of happiness, there's a Harvard professor, many professors, I suppose, and they tell you the same thing in terms of studying happiness around the world. There's very little correlation between how much money you have and the level of happiness past the basic subsistence level. The element that there's the highest correlation with is an element of community, who you're with. So it's this meaningful work. Are you on a mission? And meaningful relationships through a life arc that evolves. So that's it. My definition of success is more like evolving well and contributing to evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And those stand so true from my monk training too. So hearing them from you in a different context is so encouraging to hear. And for anyone who's watching or listening right now, please make sure that as Ray is speaking, you're visualizing his beautiful analogies. Because as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm visualizing being in the forest. I'm visualizing being around people. I'm looking at the people in my life and seeing them as different aspects. And Ray paints such a beautiful picture as he speaks. So if you're listening right now, anytime he shares an analogy or a story, put yourself in that place, because it's going to help you go there deeper. And I think you do a brilliant job of that, Ray. And some of your videos I saw as well, the animations really bring that to life. So I can see them in my mind. Tell us about how you've been so careful about curating and constructing that community for yourself. You said that you found people in the woods who could see what you couldn't see, and you protected each other, which I love.
It was an evolutionary process, you know. So you're on a mission. You're on a mission.
Yes.
And you have people who are on the mission with you.
Yes.
And then you start to, I started to find what do I want in those people, and what should the relationship be? And I first just picked people I liked. And I didn't realize how we see things differently, how we process things so differently. Our minds work so differently. And so when you start to see, let's say, there's a big picture thinker, there's a detail thinker. And we all become frustrated with the other person because they, like the big picture says, why are you so hung up with those details? Let's go to the big picture. And the detail thinker thinks, you've got your head in the clouds.
Yeah.
You've got to come down to the nuts and bolts. And they're both right. And they start to realize that you need each other. You start to need the different ways of thinking. So I would convey that many people see things very differently. And how do you deal with those differences in seeing? They're disagreements. How do you deal with disagreements? My approach, and I learned, is whenever you're in a disagreement and you don't know how to deal with it well because it's not going well, pause and then step above the disagreement together and then say, what are the protocols for us to disagree well? How should we do this thing? Always go to the higher level and think, how should you do that thing? And so you get protocols. I've developed these protocols. Like a protocol would be, like if we're not being able to communicate well together, a standard protocol is let's mutually agree on someone who will help moderate this conversation, and then we'll work things through. Or talking. How do I repeat what you're saying so that I'm conveying that I understand? And you start to develop those types of protocols and start to develop the appreciations of people seeing things differently. You discover also differences in values, differences in the most core principles of how people should be with each other. In my case, it was so essential that we're going to be completely, radically truthful and radically transparent with each other, right? And that was my discovery. And it's difficult. But I've also learned that many cases, the difficult things are only the first order consequences. They're difficult. The second order consequences is they're rewarding. And so by being able to have that radical truthfulness and that transparency to demonstrate that there's no spin was a discovery. So there's an evolutionary arc. I would say in my culture, in my building an organization, a community that was beneficial, I'll describe it in one sentence.
Yes, please.
Long sentence. It's an idea meritocracy. In other words, it's a place where the best ideas win out regardless of hierarchy. So an idea meritocracy, in which the goals are meaningful work and meaningful relationships. Meaningful work to be on a mission together. And meaningful relationships is an equal importance of that. And that produces this tough love. So I'll repeat it. I'm saying it too many words. So it's an idea meritocracy in which the goals are meaningful work and meaningful relationships through radical truthfulness and radical transparency. Anyway, that was my way. That's what worked for me.
That's incredible. And I guess all of these tools you were mentioning earlier about these protocols are to consistently realign everyone with that. Because as we start wearing away and you start seeing lack of transparency or lack of truthfulness or lack of meaning and mission, you're constantly having to realign everyone.
Right. And let's talk about that radical truthfulness and radical transparency. If you can achieve it, there's no confusion. Because if we're really truthful, we're taking all those hidden agendas and all those other things and we're not confused. We're putting them on the table.
Yes.
And if you understand the art of thoughtful disagreement, how to disagree well so that you can then learn from each other or get past your disagreement in an idea meritocratic way, it is incredibly powerful. And we're not taught that. We're not taught some of these things. We're not taught the value of failure.
Definitely not.
We're not taught, we're taught to be right, to be attached to our views of being right.
Yep.
You can't learn if you're attached to being right because you think it's embarrassing because you don't know. So that notion of thoughtful disagreement, because if there's disagreement, somebody must be wrong. And how do you know that wrong person isn't you? So these are the things that if you have thoughtful disagreement, radical truthfulness, radical transparency. You build trust and effectiveness.
Yeah. And that really sounds like it requires the pulverizing of the ego. Like that to me sounds like we really have to crush and break down this ego, because our ego is what's we're confronted with, of believing I'm right, I'm going to win, right? Whenever you're in a disagreement and you handle it badly, you think it's win or loss.
That's right. I think the greatest tragedy of mankind, big statement, the greatest tragedy of mankind.
Wait for it.
The greatest tragedy of mankind, because it stands in the way of so many people making decisions well and operating well with each other, is holding an opinion in your head that's wrong. And it's such a tragedy, meaning it's so easily fixed,
So true.
that all you have to do is put it out there and stress test it and say, I might be wrong. And how do I stress test it? And by stress testing it, you raise your probabilities of being right. So I think the education system rewards being right. So many things reward that being right that stands in the way of taking in all that's out there to really help you be right.
I think that's such a powerful point. I'm just nodding away. If you're only listening, then I'm nodding away, because when you say that, I think that's so true, that all of our conditioned patterns are about being right. It's never been to understand things from different angles or perspectives, which is what reality is much more of than being right or wrong or black or white. And so much of our patterns in our mind are always win or loss, right or wrong, one or two. There's rarely this cohesive synergy that you're speaking about. That actually takes a lot more work to get to.
The greatest, whatever success I've had in life has had much more to do with my knowing how to deal with my not knowing than anything that I know. Because what I don't know is vastly greater. Think about all the experts that you can turn to and all the perspectives that you can get and how much you can learn by what's being out there. And that maximizes, and it's a kick.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things, the other thing, which we've already dived into today, you called your book Principles. And I thought that was quite a counterculture way of doing it, in a good way. And the reason I say that is today, so much of the language around business and work or entrepreneurship is around doing. It's around having. It's around grinding. It's, these are the terms and the language that's used around business, whereas you go back and you talk about principles. And on the phone when we were speaking, you were talking about this differentiation between doing and then living a principled life. Just explain that to us and why you believe we have to start with principles.
I'm going to start by explaining how I learned it.
Yes, please.
And what principled thinking is and how it's different
Amazing.
from other types of normal thinking, what most people do, right?
Yeah.
And there's also a suggestion I'd like to pass along to those who are listening. What I found was that whenever I would make an important decision, I would write down my criteria for making that decision, because that situation would come along again. So I could be clear. It helped me clarify my thinking. And when the next time it came along, I would start to see how to deal with that, and I could refine my principles. So the book is a compendium of these principles that I wrote over 25 years on that situation. It changed my way of thinking, and it also changed my way of interacting, because then I would see everything as another one of those. Rather than be in the blizzard of these bits and pieces of things coming at me, I would start to think, oh, it's one of those.
Yes.
And I would then operate as what was my principle. And those principles became like internalized. So think of it almost like a batter batting against a pitcher who sometimes throws curveballs, sometimes throws fastballs, sometimes throws sliders. And if you do that over a period of time, you begin to learn, oh, that's a fastball. And then you start to think, okay, the fastball, I operate this. And you start to internalize. You become better and better, and life becomes simpler for you because you're not seeing those millions of bits and pieces. You're seeing it as another one of those. And you have that instinctual ability that allows you to then make that decision and operate that way. And then you can communicate with people on principled levels thinking. It's particularly important because I would say the decline of religion, the decline, in other words, even your values. You have to think, what is your religion? If you chose a religion, and it's not a preconditioned religion, what are your values? What are your principles? How do you think life really works? And you're making choices for yourself. That is the form of those principles. So when you start to think about those and you're clear about those and you can communicate with others, you can see whether your principles are aligned with others or not. Because if you don't get along with somebody, and those irreconcilable differences are due to the fact that there are deep differences in principles, not differences in interpretations of things and so on. It's like any great relationship. There'll be arguments along the way, but it is those core beliefs. And by being clear about them, clear to yourself and clear to others, it's very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It just makes it so much more simpler to navigate. Because you're so right that when you don't have that clarity, all you're being attacked with is so much noise. And there's just so many millions of different pieces of noise that are coming at you that you haven't filtered, you haven't clarified, you haven't carefully selected. And that's why we feel so overwhelmed today. We're drowning in all of that noise.
And what for?
Exactly.
Where are you going? What for? What are you seeking to fulfill? What is it in you?
Yeah. And I think that this is where I'd recommend everyone who's listening or watching right now, I'd love for you to take a moment to do that exercise in your own time that Ray's just laid out, of really figuring out what are your criteria behind decisions, why you're making those decisions, what's pushing you towards them. For me as well, whenever I have a number of options, what I do is I write down all my options and choices I have, and I write down on top of them why I would take them. And often my why for something would be just pride or ego, and often above one of them it will be love and depth and values.
Well, here's the exercise. You're talking about the writing down.
Yes.
Okay. I'm saying the writing down. I recommend to your listeners,
please
write them down, okay? Do your reflections, and then you write them down. It helps, it clarifies it. The other thing that happens is, I think of the mind as being, there are almost two yous in you. There is a conscious, logical you, and there's a subliminal, emotional you.
Yes.
That you don't understand. That was Freud's great discovery.
Yes.
That there is a part of your brain that is really controlling you, but because it's not conscious to you, you don't know it's there and it's controlling you. And the key, I think, is to align those things. Like there's intuition or there's those emotions. And when they come up and you're seeing yourself doing things, if you can reflect on yourself and align your subliminal with your cerebral, it helps you because you have a double check. That emotional thing, like maybe it's an intuition. Well, maybe it's right and maybe it's wrong. So respect it. It's coming up, but look at it with that logical. And when you achieve that alignment, writing helps you do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And if you're sitting there going, I'm not a writer, first try. And if after trying, if you still feel you're not a writer, voice note yourself, speak it out to yourself and hear yourself back. Because when you hear, because you're used to listening to other people, you'll also be able to start listening to your subconscious self. And that's going to help you really try and bring that alignment and clarity together.
And then you'll start to see that there's a limited number, maybe a few hundred, maybe a couple hundred circumstances or whatever. You're going to start to see everything happens over and over again. You're going to understand yourself better. It's very wonderful.
Absolutely. I love that. In one of these principles, you talk about this scale of savoring the experience, savoring life, and then making an impact. And I wanted to know how you reconcile the two and how you've seen them grow together.
I think the big choice in life, there are a lot of big choices in life, but is accomplishment versus savoring life. Okay? So, savoring life is smell the roses and what a beautiful day, or that moment, make sure you time with the people that you love and all of that. And then there's the other, which is accomplishment and impact, right? So there is those kinds of choices. And you have to discover yourself. Well, where are you and how do you deal with those types of things? I think to be most effective is where they align.
Right.
Okay. That's I think the key.
Right.
Like to make your work, your passion one and the same, right? That kind of thing.
Yes.
So that's I think that's the best.
Yeah.
Okay. Your accomplishment. If you're passionate and then you can maybe have those things align. But that's the choice in life, right? And you could see that in different cultures.
Yes. Yeah. And today we see today with all of the generations that we're in and seeing in work right now, there's a desire to have it all. There's a desire to have great pay, a great job that's meaningful, and have lots of time off to go on holiday and be able to, go out on a Friday night and have a good time. And I feel like this desire to have everything is quite a challenge because then you striving to have all of these different paths. Go on.
That's what the second phase of the life is like. First phase of the life is, you learn, and really it's generally a lot of fun. And also, by the way, you think you can conquer the universe, and then you come to this other phase where it's all open and so on. And what you find out is there are too many things to do. You don't have enough time. Okay. You don't have enough time for each one of those things. And so the question is, how do you deal with that? Well, there are two ways you can deal with it. You can, of course, prioritize, and you need to do that. But the real way, most importantly, is to know how to get the most out of an hour. In other words, you can put more life into life if you know how to get leverage and if you know how to be as effective. Because if you get more out of each hour, wow, then it's like more life within those constrained number of hours.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've always described that for me as time management versus energy management. And for me, if I can bring all my energy into 1 hour, that's more powerful than me having 10 hours of half the energy.
And in addition, there are techniques.
Right.
Right?
Love to hear some.
Well, like for example, I learned leverage through other people. Once you learn leverage, in my particular case, of course, I built up to this. I have about 30 direct reports. And what it means is, now this is after years of doing, I had nothing, by the way. But what I can do is, and with the good relationships and how that works, basically they can typically work for about 50 hours on something that I'm trying to accomplish for every hour that I deal with them.
Right.
So I get an enormous amount of leverage, or I know how to prioritize, or I know how to break my schedule, knowing I mentioned meditation or other things to get myself the clarity.
Yeah.
So there are many techniques. I wrote a bunch of them in the books, and many other people have other techniques too.
Yeah.
But as you start to realize that you can have much more life by knowing these various types of techniques.
Yeah. I'd love to know some of your tips and techniques around prioritization. I think that's something that people are so challenged with right now. What have been some of your best principles or rules around how to prioritize something?
I don't want to give people my priorities, but I do want to give them the notion of to go above it. Okay, like the same rule, if you're in a disagreement, you go above it. Okay, so many people are in the blizzard of all these things coming at them, and they're in it, and they're trying to deal with every one of those. Okay, so pause and step back, and then start to think, what are you really going after? You have to look subliminally. It may be deep-seated in your childhood. It may be, but what is that pull? Okay, and that becomes, and then how do you apportion it? You do need a plan. You need some sort of self-discipline as you look down and you say, well, I'm going to spend dinners with my kids, or I'm going to do X, Y, Z in terms of those to-dos. But at the highest level, you're saying, what do I want? What are my choices? because you have to realize. And then what I find is if you pause and you do that slowly over time, don't just try to do it in a minute. You can find that you can have a lot of your cake and eat it too, right? I used to take my kids on my business trips.
What a great education. Wow. Crazy.
It's an example that sometimes you discover with time that you can have your cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah.
So take the time.
Yeah, patience. Patience is...
I think that there's 5 steps to success. First is you have to know your goals. You have to know what you're going out there. And that does require prioritization. The second is on your way to your goals, you're going to encounter your problems, your failures, your problems. So that's step 2, encounter them. They're standing in your way. Number 3 is you have to diagnose those to the root cause. What is producing your problems?
At the root.
At the root cause. And that may be that you, or it may be those around you who are not good at things or whatever, or you're doing something you need to do better. Or it may be that you're in the wrong place. But you have to get at the root cause to do that diagnosis. Once you know the specific thing that's standing in your way, that personal discovery process, you have to go to the 4th step. And that 4th step is to design a way to get around them.
Yeah.
If it may be, for example, that if you have a particular weakness, work with somebody who is strong where you're weak. Or it may be change your job or whatever it is, but you've got to get around that specific thing that you've diagnosed as standing in your way. And then when you have a design, you have to do it. A lot of people come up with designs, but they don't push through and do it. And I think life is just the constant 5-step process over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because if you can do those 5 things, you will be successful. You'll evolve fairly quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you add 2 methods or keys to succeeding, which you call flexibility and self-accountability, because within those 5 steps, there's going to need to be a bit of flexibility or a lot of flexibility and self-accountability. And I love you pointed this out. You said, don't blame bad outcomes on anyone but yourself, which is like huge self-accountability.
Yeah. I really do believe, I'll give you a mindset. I do believe that I can do anything and that it is just a matter of my character and my creativity. So that it is a personal test of me. It may be difficult, and I have to be creative enough, and maybe with the help of others. And that is largely true. Really, if you're creative enough and you don't have to do it yourself, you can get the ideas from other people, and then you are enough character in it to do it. Wow.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest challenge, that we try and do it all on our own. We think we have to be everything. We think we have to be the face and the background and the side and everything in between. And actually, collaboration, coming together with other people is so much more what has brought success in the world.
Yes. When you start to realize that actually you can't see, it's like going from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions or black and white to color, that when you start to see things through others' eyes, you can see the world in a totally different, much richer way, and you know how to navigate it. It's such a power, such a gift.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much, Ray. Ray, this has been such an incredible experience diving in with you. Anyone who's listening and watching, I hope you've been taking notes. I hope you stopped and did certain activities when Ray and I spoke about them. And Ray, we finish every interview with a final 5, which is our final 5 quick fire round, rapid fire round. So these are answers that are 1 word to 1 sentence maximum. So I'm going to start with the first one. What's one trait you look for in a potential employee?
Character.
Amazing. Okay, great. Number 2, what is one trait you possess that you believe you got to where you are today? One of your traits.
Fear, humility, fear and acceptance of failing.
Wow. I love that answer. That's awesome. I was not expecting that. It's a great answer. Sorry, I'm going off the tangent now because you can explain that. I love that one.
And a taste for adventure, because the joy
Yeah.
of the adventure, it makes it all worthwhile. And I've come to appreciate the pain.
Yeah. What's the best thing you've learned from this transition in your life where you're now passing it on? What's something you've learned from the process of passing lessons on?
That it's hard and to let go.
To let go of?
To let go of caring
Right,
while
right.
caring.
Right. Yes. That's such an important point. Absolutely. Yeah. As a teacher, as a guide, as a coach, you can only facilitate growth, but you can't force it.
Just let it.
Yes, yeah. You've got to give everyone the opportunity to let it out. Okay, number 4. What's one thing in stage 3 you're looking forward to the most, to the stage of life that you're in right now?
Well, as Joseph Campbell said, to be free to live and free to die. I think that you're in an arc in which you gain freedom, total freedom, no obligation. The greatest joy now is no obligation.
Yeah.
I'm free.
Yeah. Amazing.
And to watch others be successful without me. That is the greatest joy, to watch others to be successful without me. I'm free and they are successful without me.
Wow. Amazing. Well, you wrote this book over a number of principles, and the 5th and final question is, what's a principle that you've learned this year, or that you're currently trying to learn or learning or testing this year?
Well, this is my transition year. I guess what I've learned, I've been so pleased to have the interactions with people who are learning. I don't know if it's a principle. It's not a principle, but it's an experience that the interactions that I'm having on social media, the conversations, so many nice people. And the exchanges have just been so beautiful. I think that was my main discovery as I'm also going through my evolutionary process of that I described.
I absolutely love that. That's amazing, Ray. You're absolutely incredible. If anyone loved the conversation today, make sure you go and grab a copy of Principles by Ray Dalio. If you haven't already, if you have read the book, which I know many of you are very excited, we were going to have Ray on the podcast, go ahead and follow him on social media and across all the other channels if you don't already. Ray, is there a particular channel that you would prefer everyone to go follow you on? Is there, or every, you've got Facebook, there's Instagram, there's YouTube. Go ahead and follow Ray across all the channels. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you grab a copy of the book. Today, we just literally scratched the surface of all the incredible principles that are inside.
I'd like to add one thing.
Sure, please.
I put the book and also video case studies and everything in a free app. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to buy a book. You can get the book. It's on the iOS Apple store. It's a free download, and it has videos.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Free.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
So the book is great if you like books, but you also have this other video, which is a live. You might like that.
That's awesome. And there's so many great episodes that I've been watching on Ray's social channels as well that really break down and visualize these principles for you to check out. Thank you so much for being a subscriber to On Purpose. Rate and review this podcast. And most importantly, share what you learned. There were so many great insights from Ray today, so many great moments of wisdom and principles. Extract them, share them on Twitter, or on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, and I'll share my favorite ones as well. Make sure you tag Ray and I in those messages, and we can't wait to see you again next week. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So grateful. Yeah. Thank you. I hope that was good for you. Thank you so much. If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.
Keep noticing who you are, noticing awareness. Asking yourself, am I aware? It's so interesting, because when you notice who you are, you feel this absolute relief travel all through your body, which means prior to that, you were tense, you were holding on to life.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every single one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now today I have the honor and privilege to sit down with one of my favorite authors, someone who has impacted millions of lives over the last couple of decades, and someone that I was just sharing with, I never believed I'd ever get the opportunity to sit down with. Because back in 2006 and before, when I was reading her work and interacting with the work that she was doing in the world, I never believed I'd get this opportunity. And so today I feel extremely grateful to be sitting down with the one and only Rhonda Byrne. And for those of you that don't know, and I mean, there'll literally be like 0.3% of you that may not know, but is an internationally renowned best-selling author that is best known for a documentary and book titled The Secret. Rhonda's work has massively transformed millions of lives around the world, and her newest work is a continuation of her previous insights, and it's called The Greatest Secret. I've just finished reading this book. I genuinely cannot wait for it to be in your hands, and so we'll be putting the link to the book with the podcast, so make sure that you go and grab this whenever you have that moment during this conversation, that you're accessing The Greatest Secret. Rhonda, welcome to On Purpose, and thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, Jay, thank you so much. Do you know, as you were doing that intro, I got very teary because just when you were mentioning changing the lives of millions of people, it really, to this day, you know, it just affects me. It's so humbling. And I'll receive a letter from somebody, and it's like the very first time that I've read a letter and somebody's life has changed, and it's never altered over the years. It just affects me the same way. So I just had a total meltdown listening to you then. So thank you.
That's amazing. I love hearing that, because I feel so similarly that it's such a honor and humbling opportunity to have an impact on anyone. And so I love hearing you say that, and it's so beautiful. And I know I heard recently that you actually moved, and you moved home. Is that true?
That's true.
And
Yes.
I was going to start there, because I almost feel like the act of moving is such an interesting journey in and of itself, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I wanted to ask you what your move was like and what that journey was like on each of those levels.
Well, I love it because you always end up by throwing material things out. You know, I don't need this and I don't need that. So it's a real cleansing to move, I think, and go through everything. And I don't need any of these things anymore. And I mean, sometimes I give away things and then I'm like, oh gosh, I really did need that. But who cares? You know, who cares? But do you know, can you believe this? I moved next door to where I was. Next door. Right?
Oh,
Is
wow.
is that crazy or what? And so I'm on a property that is 85 acres of orchards and avocados and oranges and lemons and all of those things. And what absolutely gets me all of the time in life, and I never tire of it, is the way that life or the universe always lines up everything I've ever loved in my life. And so always, absolutely always, like open fires. And this property has deer walking all over it. And for me, coming from Australia, we don't have deer in Australia. And so it's just, oh my God, so amazing to wake up in the morning and there are deer outside my bedroom window. And I mean, just squirrels jumping everywhere. And so, yeah, it was really, really beautiful, a beautiful move, actually. And it was effortless, absolutely effortless. And kind of a new, you know, when you move, it's sort of a new. But then at the same time, you take you with you wherever you go, right? And so,
Yes.
and so it's always really good to just be working on the inner part of ourselves, because then when you take you with you, you have a fabulous life.
What was the thing that you were happy to let go of physically or emotionally of that space? And what was something that you rediscovered, maybe that you'd forgotten about, that you thought, oh, I actually am excited to take this with me?
actually, I had moved a year earlier. So I'd had a massive plans when I moved. I had been in a really, really, really big house for like 15 years. And so that was amazing because I was just giving away everything. Would you like this? Would you like this? And so this move wasn't as great because I'd already cleaned everything out for the year before. And so let me think. I mean, the things that I loved about the house that I was in was the incredible sunrises and sunsets, and that I got to see those. That house had massive orange trees everywhere. And so the orange blossom was absolutely intoxicating. I think, Jade, all the things I love in life are the things that are free. They're not anything that kind of money buys. And the house that I was in was full of light and absolutely beautiful. But then the house that I've moved to, and it didn't have open fires, the other house, and I love open fires. And then the house that I've moved to has open fires. It has all of the light. It has the orange trees, the orange blossom. It has a beautiful view across the oceanfront views. So it has the sunrises and the sunsets. And so it's just everything kind of lined up for me with the house that I'm in after being in the previous house. But I'm trying to think of things that, really, I think I just gave away mostly kind of clothes and things like that, and a few appliances and, just sort of things like that, in my previous house, I gave away everything. I gave away barbecues. I was like saying to people, do you need a juicer? Do you need this? Do you need that? And I was just giving away absolutely everything, which I love. And when I moved from Australia to the United States, this was just prior to The Secret being released, I came with 2 suitcases. That was it. I left my home, everything that I had collected over, 20 years or whatever it was. I left it all behind and I came here with two suitcases, and it was for the release of The Secret. And I just intuitively knew that the United States would be the country that lit The Secret up first, and that I needed to be in the States. So I traveled here. I had 2 suitcases, and then everything that I owned back there, I gave it away. I gave it all away. Absolutely everything. Yeah. Except for 2 things. 2 things that I ended up by having shipped over. That one you can see behind me there, that tapestry. Right. Can you see that?
Yes, I can see it.
And see that Buddha.
Yes.
That Buddha. And
I
those
love
2
that.
things, those 2 things I brought with me, they were just like really special to me. But everything else I gave away. So I'm really good at letting things go, and I'm great now at letting things go, especially material things. I'm not really attached, Jay, anymore. I had decades of attachment, and I don't think attachment in the end's a lot of fun. So,
absolutely.
I mean, it's really beautiful, and I have all of open space here, and I think that reflects the way that I feel inside. And my journey of the greatest secret is just like this freedom and openness to life, and just this trust and faith in life, this total faith that life has got everything under control.
Yes. Well, let's start there at the beginning of The Greatest Secret. You share this beautiful thought around how, what keeps us from the greatest secret is a belief. And I really liked how, despite the incredible success of The Secret, you've continued on this journey to continually seek for a deeper secret and the greatest secret, as you call it. And you say that a belief has been blocking us this whole time from this secret. Tell us about this belief. Where does this block of a belief come from? And how has it created such a strong hold on each and every single one of us?
Well, the belief is that we are separate and that we are individual, and that all that we consist of, all that makes us up, is just a body and a mind. And I think the majority of people would consider that they're a body and a mind, and the name that they've been given and the story of their life. And I was born here and parents did this and I do this for a living and siblings, and the story that we then we identify with and carry around with us. And those stories, it doesn't matter what the story is, it doesn't matter how fabulous your life has been, it does not compare to who we really are. And so we have this belief that we are limited, basically, in a nutshell, that we're a limited individual, that we're born and that we die. And that's kind of it. And the truth is we are so much more than that. We are certainly having the experience of being an individual, and we're certainly having a human experience, but ultimately it is not who we are, and we were never born and we never die. And we are, if I were to sum up everything that we are, it's almost the opposite to everything we strive to be. So we are all the intelligence that there is. We are all the beauty that there is. We're all the happiness that there is. We are pure love without any judgment whatsoever. We are complete and utter freedom, which is why freedom means so much to us, why we will fight and struggle to be free. And so we have total knowing of absolutely everything in the moment of knowing it. We are infinite and we are eternal. And that is what is actually experiencing this particular form. And so we have a belief that we are an individual, that we're separate, that we're born and that we die. And our mind reaffirms that over and over and over again through all of its thoughts and with everything we say, with every thought and every single thing that we say. And actually, doesn't the world affirm that over and over, that we're separate? But we are unlimited. We are absolute perfection. And I'm not talking about the name or the ego. I'm not talking about that, because we all can see what egos can get up to. You know, they can cause a lot of trouble. Egos want approval. They want attention. They want to be right all the time. They judge all of the time. And so, you know, they're not something to attach ourselves to and to identify with, when we are this incredible being that is blissful happiness. And so we can have a life where we are living as an individual human, having an individual human experience, but from the perspective of the infinite being that we are, in which case we will never be touched by negativity, no matter what happens, and we will remain in lasting happiness no matter what. And this has been my journey, really, from The Secret to now. And I was searching 7 days a week. I was just like one of those crazy people. I'm like, if there is this law that governs our mind, then there is definitely way, way more to discover. And so I just searched in religions and spiritual traditions and read thousands of books. And it wasn't until 2016 that I had this experience where I realized who we are. And I was like, why haven't I seen this? Why haven't I? What is it? How could I have missed this? And from that moment of realizing that, there was this happiness that arose inside of me. And then with everything that I did from 216 to 220, that happiness just became deeper and deeper. And then I would just notice things like that person, you know, when they would do something or other, they used to bother me a lot. That didn't bother me anymore. And how was I ever bothered by that? And that particular subject doesn't bother me anymore. And so I was just finding that I wasn't reacting to life. The reactions were all dissolving. Judgment was dissolving. I was just, whatever was happening, I'm like, it's fine, it'll be okay. And so with letting go of all of those things, including the belief that we're a limited being, we become free, really, truly free. And then we will live a life that's described as heaven on earth or nirvana, a life where we know we don't die. And the body ends, sure, but who we are does not. And so, yeah, that's been that's been my journey. That's been my journey.
Well, it's beautiful hearing it, because I was very fortunate enough to at least learn about that intellectually when I was 18 and I first met the monks that I lived with. And then when I went and lived as a monk for 3 years in India and across Europe when I was 22 to 25, the texts that we studied, whether it's the Vedas or the Gita, introduced me to that, at least intellectually. And I say at least intellectually because I believe that a lot of these ideas begin at intellect before they truly become realized.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think in 2016, it was a realization of who I am, but was I completely living that? No, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I've lost it. Now, I had it and now I've lost it. And of course you can't lose it because it's who you are. But you've got to go, you've kind of got to go on this, a bit of a journey. You don't have to. There are some people that, oh gosh, they will just hear it and that's it. They will live it. They will live like that for the rest of their life.
Yes.
And they are just in joy. And I've had some letters from some people that has happened to. For me, it was more of a journey. And but oh wow, when you just it definitely intellectually is the beginning, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, because that's where you start, and
Absolutely.
then it's sort of the diligence to keep noticing who you are, noticing awareness, noticing, asking yourself, am I aware, is, one way to begin. Am I aware? And even in The Secret, I talk about that, remember to remember that you're aware and to be aware. And so you just keep coming back to noticing who you are. It's so interesting because when you notice who you are, you feel this absolute relief travel all through your body, which means prior to that, you were tense, you were holding on to life, the kind of white knuckle and everything. And so, oh my gosh, it's just like this incredible thing that we have. And then, and then you look out and you see people suffering, and that part's, really challenging because you want to help everybody, and so that they don't suffer anymore. And I remember with my teacher really early on, and I would be like, oh, I've lost it. And why don't I have it all of the time? And she would say, oh, because you haven't suffered enough. Is what she would say to me. You need to suffer some more, and then you really, 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 it's going to mean more to you than anything else in life. And it's a wonderful thing. But oh my gosh, in your 20s, Jay, heaven.
I remember learning that definition, which you described so beautifully, of Satchitananda, and the idea that we're full of knowledge, eternal, and full of bliss. And I remember one of the ways we were trained to understand that is we had no mirrors in the ashram. And without a mirror, you lost conception of your physical self because you no longer could check how you looked. And the other one was, I remember when I first started, and I know you used the beautiful word awareness in The Greatest Secret. I remember I used to write on a little Post-it note when I'd wake up in the morning, I'd have it next to my bedside table, and then on the by the place where I brush my teeth, that I am awareness.
Did you really?
Yeah,
oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Oh
yeah,
my
to
gosh,
remind myself in the morning to wake up with the understanding that I'm not this body.
Oh, brilliant. That is brilliant. People should do that. People should do that. I mean, that is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I am awareness. Because the moment that you say, like, our mind can't comprehend awareness, it can't comprehend it. The mind is sitting in awareness. And so the really beautiful thing is that saying something like I am awareness or am I aware, the mind just goes quiet, just really quickly. And when the mind's quiet, then all that there is awareness or consciousness or whatever. The word doesn't matter. I tried to choose the word that I felt was the simplest, that people could kind of understand. But the moment the mind drops, there is awareness. And so, I love that. I am aware. Love it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was, that's why when I was reading your book, and I hope you can tell, like when I was reading your book, I felt so happy because when you were sharing this was the greatest secret, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think there is a deeper secret at the beginning of knowledge. And we were always told that this is the first lesson you'll learn and the one that will take you your whole life to live, like to actually practice. And so when I was reading the book, it was so beautiful for me because I could totally see how much you care for people and for what journey you want them to take. But isn't it fascinating that we almost, and you said something really beautiful, and you talk about in the book about how actually we are free and we have complete freedom, but we limit ourselves. But isn't it fascinating that we think that the body and mind keep us safe? So like the very things that are actually keeping us imprisoned, we think that they are our safety.
Totally. And don't you think, also with what's happened in the last year, that we had this idea, or most people have this idea that they work really, really hard to get safety and security, to accrue things and to have money in the bank and to have a house and all of those things, to have safety and security. And this world event that came along shook that and actually showed everybody what is the truth. And that is that we will never find safety and security in the world. And the reason we won't is it's always changing, always changing. But we are the only safety and security in existence. We're trying to get on the outside what we are on the inside. And that is not to say to enjoy this incredible world. I mean, this is a miracle. This is miraculous, this experience of this world. And it is here for us to enjoy in every way that each person wants to enjoy it. But to know who we are, to instead of spending a whole life trying to fill ourselves from the outside world, which will never ever work, is to spend just a little bit of time on the inside, like waking up to I am awareness, or asking, am I aware? And one of the things that I found that was really fantastic, and there's so many incredible practices, and I'm sure, oh my gosh, you would have done so many fabulous ones. I would love to hear about that. One of the things that all of the things in the Greatest Secret, all of the things that I did, and the teachers that are in the Greatest Secret were my journey, all of them from the secret through to now. Every single one of them changed my life in one way or another. Some I followed for a couple of years and some for a month. But all of those teachers played a really, really big part in my life. And so the practice in the Greatest Secret that had the greatest effect on me, and that I would say for anybody, is the best thing you can ever, ever, ever do. And that is to never resist negative emotions. And instead to do the exact opposite, which is what we have not been told to do, which is the opposite to resistance is to welcome. So resist is push away and welcome is to pull in.
Embrace, yeah.
Embrace. Exactly. And to embrace those negative emotions, because the most incredible thing happens when we do embrace them, when we allow them to be there, when we don't try and change them, when we don't want to make them go or do anything, but just allow them to be there, they just evaporate. And the more that you do it, the faster they evaporate. Because when I started, I would feel a strong emotion and it would maybe last 30 seconds, 45 seconds or something like that, and then gradually ebb away. But the more that I welcome, the weaker they get. Each time you welcome a negative emotion, it just gets weaker, until you don't have a trace of that negative emotion in the body at all anymore. And when you don't have a trace of it, you're never going to feel it.
Explain to us, as you do in the book, what does it mean to truly embrace and welcome a negative feeling? What does that mean in practice? Because I couldn't agree with you more. And just to help people as they're listening and watching, they're thinking, you know what, there's so much negativity in the world. I'm watching the news. I'm stressed out about this. My kids are at home. I'm having to homeschool. How do they welcome that? And I agree with you. We resist completely. We don't want to feel negative.
We don't want to, because it's not pleasant, feeling negative feelings. So when you feel a negative feeling arise in you, notice the feeling. Don't focus into the feeling, because if you focus into it, you'll just make it stronger. The mind is really powerful, so don't focus into it, but notice the feeling. And just welcome it. So it's almost like you could imagine just putting your arms out like this, arms out to the side of you, and just allowing the feeling, which is simply energy. That's all it is. Even fear, it's just energy, and just allowing it to pass on through. One thing that I did was I would imagine putting my arms around and embracing the feeling and pulling the feeling in close to me. And I just found that was amazing for me. I think people can try all kinds of different things. Like, I just imagined that feeling was one of my oldest, dearest friends that I love so much that I hadn't seen in decades, and they arrived at my door. And I was just like, could not get my arms around them fast enough. And that is what I imagined with each of the feelings. And I mean, at one point in my life, I did that with depression. And so and that's really how I learned how powerful this practice is, because when I wrapped my arms around the depression, it just dissolved. And the relief, the relief that you feel when a negative feeling dissolves is so good. It's worth every second. It's like a high. And the reason it's like a high is because when you dissolve the feeling, there's you underneath and who you really are. And so you get a flash of who you really are, this kind of joy and happiness. And so, yeah, that's what I did. I would embrace the feeling and hold it in without focusing on it. Notice it, but don't focus into the feeling, and just let it dissolve. And I promise the next time you feel that feeling, it will never be as strong when you do it. And so you do the same thing the next time that feeling arises. And then the time after that, it's going to be weaker. It just gets weaker and weaker and weaker until you get to a point where you're like, I can't remember the last time that I got angry. I just can't remember. When did I ever get angry? You just, or agitated or impatient, and so you do it with every feeling. So to give people a really good guide, I would say that unless you're feeling really happy, joyously happy, welling up inside of you, you have a negative feeling. Pretty good. You don't need to know what the name of it is to welcome it. You just welcome it. It doesn't matter about its name. Doesn't matter what it is. Just welcome the feeling, or embrace the feeling, or allow the feeling to be there. And then you will begin to dissolve these negative feelings that are actually masking who you are. The more you dissolve them, the greater the happiness arises within you.
Beautiful. I love that. And I encourage everyone right now who's listening and watching to do that practice, to give it a go, to experience it and experiment with it, because what Rhonda's saying is something that it needs to be experienced. It needs to be felt. It needs to be put into practice. It's not something that you need to overthink or overanalyze. Actually do it and feel it, and you'll figure out how it works for you. Rhonda, I'm intrigued. What is the first thing you do in the morning to start your day? What is it that you do that you feel starts your day? Because I feel that a lot of the times what I'm noticing, especially now in the culture we live in, whether it's reaching for our phone, whether it's looking at the news, we're starting our day with energy that's already putting us in the wrong direction or pushing us in the wrong direction. What are you doing? What are you encouraging people to do first thing in the morning to start with this understanding that we are awareness, to start with this understanding that negative feelings need to be embraced?
It's so amazing because the first thing I do now is I lay in bed and as awareness. So I be awareness. And I just lay there for a particular amount of time, just feeling the joy and the freedom of the eternal being that we are, and just lay in awareness. And so that's what I do absolutely every single morning. And what's extraordinary now, I mean, at the beginning, it was like I felt like I had to remember to do that, but that doesn't even kind of make sense. But I that's what I felt. I felt like I had to remember to do it. And now, at the moment I open my eyes, is just awareness just fills the room, and the joy just fills the room. And so I lay in that. Prior to that, I would wake up every day in gratitude. Yeah. Prior to that was gratitude was, and Jay, even now, if life gets a bit bumpy or something happens, just something not really negative, but just something where everything isn't flowing, then I will just look at gratitude and through awareness, just be so grateful for the fact that we are this infinite being and that no one dies. I'm so grateful to be aware of this and to know this. It's quite, that's also quite humbling that somehow or another in this lifetime is that I had this awakening and realization of this. And because as you say, I agree with you 100%. There is nothing greater than knowing who you are. There's nothing. There will never be anything greater than that. 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, nothing will be greater than knowing who you are and being who you are. And it's just step by step, little step by step. And now's a really good time because the ego is being challenged. The mind is being challenged. It's being hit on all sides with the disharmony and the disruption on the planet. And so now is the best time ever to really welcome those emotions and to look in the direction of who you are instead of who you are not.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just want to address, because I feel like someone may be listening to us and thinking, well, Rhonda, Jay, how does this help me be successful, be happy, live the life I want? How does this create it? And I just want to dive into what Rhonda's going to have to say about this, but I just want to address it from how I see it. The understanding is very simple, that as Rhonda's saying, we're not our body. And if we think we're our body, we will surround ourselves with things that are good for the body. But if we're not the body, then none of those things can actually satisfy us. And an example that we'd always learn from the Vedic tradition was a fish out of water. That if you took a fish out of water, you could give it a mansion, you could give it a car, you could give it jewelry, you could give it money, but that fish will die because it's not in water. It's not where it belongs, and it isn't in its natural habitat. And so similarly, understanding that we are awareness gives us the opportunity to do what is right for us as awareness, to truly feed that awareness. Because I think the challenge that we think about when we think about success or happiness, we think of success and happiness on the basis of the body and the mind. And that's why even after accumulating everything, we still feel dissatisfied because those things only touch the body and mind. Correct, Rhonda?
Correct. And really the best thing that could happen to everybody is that their greatest dream comes true. Because when your greatest dream comes true, the dream that where you are absolutely convinced that when this dream comes true, that is when I will really be happy. The best thing that can happen is that dream comes true, because when it does, you will realize that there is something missing, and that happiness that you thought you would have doesn't last. And so it's such a beautiful thing. And for people who have been successful, then they get to that point and they're like, they're not happy. And they're not happy because those things were never going to make you happy in the first place anyway. And so, but in terms of success, I would say this, that when you are who you really are, when you're living from the place more of who you are than who you are not, everything that you need and want will fall into your hands effortlessly. And you are actually, the infinite being is effortless. And the way to kind of tell who's in charge is whether it's the ego or the mind that's in charge, or who you really are that is in charge in any moment, is effort. And if you're efforting, if you can feel this efforting, then it's the ego and the mind. And if you're coming from a place of effortlessness, where athletes call it being in the flow, and everybody has these kind of descriptions, it's where the mind has stopped and just everything is flowing. You just feel like everything in the universe is just dancing your dance and singing to your song. And so in terms of success, when you are being more of who you are, that idea that was going to make you successful is what will come to you, that original idea, because the mind just recycles. That's all it can do. It's a program and recycles. And the ideas that business ideas that have never been on earth, they are coming from awareness. They are coming from above the mind. So when you are awareness, that is when everything will fall into your hands, everything that you need. And it just, your whole life flows and you're just happy all of the time. Like it's just like the universe is just saying, and I even wrote in The Secret, the shortcut to the secret is be happy now. Right? Just be happy. Let go of all of the things that you're saying why you can't be happy, and just be happy now. Because when you're happy, everything just falls into place. It's so amazing. So definitely for success, that is the fastest way to success, is to be who you are. And it's not, we're not talking about going in a cave or doing anything like that. We are talking about living your life in the incredible form and human being that you are, and having the experience that you are, but from a place of knowing that you are the infinite being, that you are immortal. And we are taught, as Jay said, it's got to be through your experience. It can't be through, I heard, Rhonda talk about this and whatever. No, not interested in you taking on another belief. What it is for you to experience it. And it is not hard for you to experience it, because it's who you are already. It's not anything that you have to go out and get. In some ways, it's almost frustrating, isn't it? I remember when I started out, I'm like, it's who I am already. But at the time, I'd be like, I can tell the mind's taken over at the moment. And it's already who we are. And so what we've done is we've attributed everything that is awareness to the mind. We've given the mind the whole thing. And it's awareness that is hearing these words right now. That is what's hearing these words, right? That is what is seeing through these eyes. It's awareness. Without awareness, we wouldn't even know we're alive.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing, Rhonda, that I've heard a lot of people say that when they first saw an autopsy or they went to a funeral, that's when they realized they weren't the body. Like that was when if you haven't seen an autopsy, I recommend everyone finds a way to visit the hospital and see that allows us to disconnect from we're not this physical body. We get that. But I feel that for a lot of people, like you rightly said, it's difficult to think we're not the mind because, like you said, we have given the mind all of awareness. We think that that is us. So I think a lot of people are getting to the understanding that we are not this body. I think people can get there to some degree, at least in their mind. But then a lot of us struggle to get behind, well, if I'm not the mind, then what else is there? Tell us about how you start seeing tell us about how you start seeing the fallibility of us thinking we're the mind.
So let's just investigate and look at the mind and what the mind is. And so it's really good for you to find out what the mind is, especially considering that most of us have given it total authority over our life. And we believe all of the thoughts that it produces, and which is the voice in your head. And the voice in your head is not who you are. So that was a really big revelation for me. So all that the mind is made of is thought. Beginning to end, full stop. It's thought. And so it's memory, which is thought. And it has images, which is just thought in pictures, but it's still thought. And the current thoughts that we think. And so all that the mind is made of thought. And so without a single thought, and check for yourself, the mind isn't there. If there's no thought, there's no mind. And so when you begin to look at that and investigate that, then it's really quite interesting. But then so now we know that the mind is just thought. And therefore, when a thought comes and a thought goes, if we were our mind, then that means that when a thought comes and when a thought goes, a little bit of us would go with it. And then when a thought comes and a thought goes, a little bit more of us would go with the thought. If we were our mind, a bit of us would be disappearing with every single thought. But if you look at it, guess what? You are there, aware, before a thought comes, and you're there after it leaves. So how can you be the mind? And the other thing is, what is aware of the thoughts in your head? Awareness is aware of the thoughts in your head because a thought is not aware. A thought has no awareness whatsoever. And so the one that is aware of the thoughts is who you really are. And so when you start to and just sort of sit with this a little bit, I'm not suggesting that, in this moment, you're like, I know I'm not the mind. But if you just kind of sit with this, and next time when you've got a whole lot of thoughts coming through your head, that you remember this and think about it. I was here before all of these thoughts, and I am still here after they go, fully intact. None of me has disappeared. And what was it that was aware? Because you could even ask this question: am I the thoughts that I think, or am I the one that is aware of those thoughts?
We never say I mind, we say my mind or my body, or we say my car, because we realize that we are not it, right? You don't say I mind, you know. So it's so clear to us in even our language that it's my mind. That means my mind belongs to something that is me, and hence the question is, who am I? Because it's my body and my mind. And I think what you just shared so beautifully is exactly that, is that it is something that is existing beyond the purview of the mind and thought simply. And for anyone who's wondering and trying to intellectually wrap their head around this, the reason why it's so powerful to understand this is because then the negativities of the mind and the body start to affect you less, because you realize that they are not you and that they are not your life. And that's the key, that, you know, if anyone's wondering, well, how does this help me? That's how it helps you, is because you start to recognize that what happens to the body, just like if your car has an accident, you may feel a little bit of pain, but you don't feel the same pain as when something affects your body directly. and that the car is a shell. And so similarly, you start realizing that I'm a driver inside my body and my mind. And so even though my body's hurt, yes, obviously I need to go to the hospital and take care of it, of course, but that still isn't me.
No, and Lester Levinson, who is in who's no longer in physical form, but who's quoted in The Greatest Secret, and he would say that that our mind is just being created for one reason and one reason only, and that is to create what we want. That's it, full stop. That's its job. That's its tool, to create what we want in this life and what we want to experience in this life. And that it's not our psychiatrist, psychologist, psychotherapist, and tells us what to do and believing our thoughts. And Jay, I believe my thoughts for decades. It's just amazing that you would believe these thoughts in your head. And if people just notice the next time, and I hope there's no next time, but that you feel agitated or negative emotion or feel stressed, it's because you were believing a whole lot of negative thoughts. That's it. You were just believing thoughts. And then that sends you, into negativity. And so our freedom is, the mind is wonderful, fantastic tool. Nothing wrong with the mind. The only problem comes with the mind is when we think it is who we are. That's the only problem.
And you give this analogy, which I loved. You talk about how we're in this dream state, and there's a need for awakening from that, because when you're asleep, right? When you're asleep, and I think a lot of people feel that. I think people right now feel an awakening in their life that's coming. Tell us about the awakening you're speaking about.
I just think you know when you've woken up. I just think you know when you've woken up, because like if you're wondering, am I asleep now? Have I woken up? When you wake up, you feel incredible. You feel so much lighter than you've ever felt. You feel so much freer, happier. Life just becomes miraculous. Everything is a miracle. The little things that you just kind of ignored before now are just things that will bring you to your knees, because the sheer beauty and love of those things, like sunsets. And I remember in my life, I would hear people speak of these things. And I remember I used to think, I just need to be able to pay my bills, forget about sunsets and all that kind of thing, But as you awaken, it just frees you from all of the limitations and all of the conditioning that we've all had in our lives. No one's to blame for that. It's just kind of part of the journey. And you just become free. The feeling is incredible. And people can have lots of little awakenings, can they not, along the way, like a little, and it's usually when you've seen through some belief that you're like, oh my gosh, I used to believe that, and that isn't true. And then you just suddenly feel lighter and freer. And so awakening is just a big one of those. It's just a huge sort of realization. It's like a wow moment, but instead it's a wow moment. Everyone can have it. There isn't anybody that can't have it. Everybody can have it because it's who you are already.
What are some of the daily rituals that people can do to experience what you're speaking about? Because as we both know, it isn't a life hack, or it isn't an app download, or it isn't it isn't a mechanical, operational, logistical, read this 3-page, it's not that. So what is it? Like, how do we make it more tangible for our tangible minds? Because our minds are wanting to do something daily and repetitively, because it is repetition. There is repetition. What would you say we can do daily?
Well, one of the things that you can do, which really helps disidentify with the body and the mind, is to take. Let me see. So first of all, take your body and just put your body aside over there because you are not the body. So just like put that aside for the moment. That is not who you are. You can pick up the body in a minute or two, but just put the body aside and then put aside your name and the age and the description of you, and also put aside the story of who you think you are. Put all of that aside. So now the body's aside, the story's aside, all of those other things are aside. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take the mind, and just for a moment, you're going to put the mind aside. And that includes all memory and all thoughts and all feelings. And you're just going to put that aside as well. Just pop that aside. And now very quickly notice what is left. Because what is left is awareness. And so that is one way, that's a really good way in the beginning to come back to awareness. And it's like, I think in ancient traditions, some of them spoke about, it's like peeling the onion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of us accruing, we think we have to pile on all this knowledge and everything. We go through life and, I need to learn more and I need to accrue more and I need to get all of these degrees, and all of that has its place, but it's never going to set you free. And so peeling away what we are not and seeing awareness is what will set you free. And once you can get to the place, I mean, honestly, the way that I did it was, and I put it in the book, and it's 3 steps. I would ask myself multiple times in the day, am I aware? And the moment I would ask, am I aware, awareness would be there. There would be this awareness. And then I would go about my day, and then I would ask again, am I aware? So I did that constantly. That's a practice to do constantly. After a while, actually really short amount of time, days really, or a week or 2 weeks, when you go to ask, am I aware, you can't even ask the question, because awareness is just completely there immediately. And so the second step is, the first step transforms into the second step. So you go from asking the question, am I aware, to automatically noticing awareness. So then lots of times in the day, notice awareness. And then the third step is stay as awareness. And the second step merges into the third step, because when you notice awareness enough, then you're going to find that you are staying as awareness more. And so what happens is, just so people understand, what happens is the mind is kind of potentially for many in the foreground at the moment and sort of running your life. And awareness is so quietly, beautifully, magnificently, quietly sitting in the background. But when you ask the question, when you notice awareness, stay as awareness, what happens is there's a total shift, and awareness comes to the foreground and the mind goes to the background. And that way you can use the mind whenever you need to use the mind. It's great to make a date, like for us, doing this podcast. It's really great for things like that. But then you can stay as awareness, and then your life is just absolutely effortless, and you just have incredible happiness. And that's where it all is.
I love that, Rhonda. It's been beautiful discussing this with you, because I love that you're really, I really do believe it is this. You're really challenging all your readers and the people in the world to go beyond
Yes.
the body and the mind, which really means to go beyond the desires of the body and the mind, which is really difficult because we've been trained to believe that the desires of the body and the mind are what will make us happy. And so I commend you and feel great joy that you're putting this message out there and encouraging people to go in this direction. And I want to ask you now what we call the final 5. These are your final 5 questions. And we do them in a fast 5 rapid fire. So
wow.
each answer has to be 1 word to 1 sentence maximum. So Rhonda, these are your final 5. And the first question is, what is your biggest lesson from the last 12 months?
Discovering awareness.
Beautiful. What are you hoping to manifest in 2021?
Freedom and joy for as many people as possible.
What do you know to be absolutely true about human nature that many would disagree with?
That is ultimately not our true nature. Human nature is not ultimately our true nature.
Question number 4. If you could create one law that everyone else in the world had to follow, what would it be?
Happiness is mandatory.
Yeah, that's
right. I would have the law of happiness, because then everything would be totally fine.
I love it. And question number 5, final question. Beautiful, very quick, concise answers, very, very clear and amazing. 5th and final question. What is one truth that you try to live by every day?
As I try and live by, as who I really am. So the infinite being that we all are, and awareness that I am, that is the most important thing in my life.
Everyone, that's Rhonda Byrne, The Greatest Secret. If you want to dive deeper into your personal, eternal journey, then this book is a phenomenal guide to doing just that. It's a lot heavier than it looks too. It's a heavy
I know,
book.
right?
It's a heavy, chunky book.
What happened there?
The truth is heavy, so it's a heavy book. It's a beautiful book. I highly recommend it to everyone who's listening and watching today. Rhonda, it's been a joy spending this time with you. I really look forward to meeting you in person and getting to do this again in person one day. And I'm really excited for all your readers, the millions of people that will read this book and take that next step in their journey towards discovering who they truly are beyond the body and mind. If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.